Destroyed my husband's reputation because of his cheating. My sister Anna, who we have religious, is telling me that I am a cheater. I love her dearly, but what could she possibly know? She's 28 and still hasn't had a boyfriend. It's my own fault, though. I shouldn't have taken Alan somewhere where someone who knows me might see us together. But Anne saw us together, kissing and hugging, and the next day demanded to know what I'd been up to. Once you've been caught, it's useless to deny it, so I told her I was spending time with my lover. My goodness, Mary Beth, have you forgotten that you are a married woman? No, Anne, I have not forgotten, though I wish I had. Mary Beth's lover? You're cheating on John with a lover? My God! My sister is a cheater. When she said that, I lost all my equanimity, said, "Go away, Anne," and stepped away from her and hoped she wouldn't do anything stupid like tell John. He'd find out soon enough as it was, but I wanted it to happen on my time and on my terms. When I had the affair with Alan, I didn't think about cheating on John. I thought of it as revenge. It's true. You know what they say about the spouse being the last to know. I had no idea how long it had been going on, but long enough that everyone John worked with knew about it. At least that's how it seemed to me when I attended a Christmas party in John's company. We were sitting at the same table as John's secretary Tammy and her boyfriend, and I noticed a lot of stares directed in our direction, as well as what I might call smirks on some of the faces that were looking in our direction. I realized why when I walked into the ladies' room. There were 6 cubicles, and 3 of them were occupied, so I took the empty one at the far end. While I was there, the occupants of 3 of the stalls had finished their business and were standing at the sinks washing their hands and touching up their makeup when one of them said, "Can you believe it? John has the nerve to sit his cheating wife at the same table as his wife?" Tammy doesn't think she's a cheater. She thinks she's about to become the new Mrs. Bernard. Sally thought so too, until he got tired of her and fired her. He can be such an asshole at times. At times? He's been an asshole ever since he got here. Remember when he fired Patty because she didn't want to go out with him? I wonder if Tammy's boyfriend knows he gets a lot of John's leftovers. Come on, Marge, tell it like it is. Giggles. Careless seconds. Giggles. I feel sorry for John's poor wife. She doesn't seem to have a clue about anything. Yeah, but as much as I dislike John, I'm not going to tell her about it. As they left the room, I sat staring at the stall door and thought Marge was right. I wasn't guessing anything. When I got back to the table, John and Tammy were gone, and Tammy's boyfriend answered my unspoken question. They went to the bathroom. Funny, I thought. But I had just come from there and definitely hadn't seen her. About 10 minutes later, John returned to the table, and after another minute or so, Tammy reappeared. It was difficult, but I managed to get through the rest of the evening without giving either John or Tammy any reason to suspect that I suspected anything. That night when we got home, I did something I hadn't done in all 8 years of our marriage. I told John that I had a headache when he wanted to make love. Make love? Very unlikely. He just wanted someone to put out the fire his mistress had started. The party was Wednesday night, and when I got to work the next day, I called Marcia in the legal department and asked who we were using to investigate the fraud. She gave me a number to call and a name to ask. I called the number and asked for Alan Pendergast, but was told he was not in the office. After writing down my name and number, they said they would get him on the phone and ask him to call me. 5 minutes later, there was a knock-knock sound, and I looked up to see a tall, handsome man standing in the doorway of my office. Mrs. Bernard? Yes. May I help you? Alan Pendergast. I was downstairs talking to Marge when I was called. I recognized the number, asked Marge who it belonged to, and here I am. What can I do for you? Unfortunately, Mr. Pendergast, I need a private investigator. I don't know if your firm handles domestic cases, but I thought if not, you might be able to recommend someone. Please call me Alan, and yes, we do have a department that handles domestic matters. What seems to be the problem? I told him about the party and what I had overheard. It's only a rumor, but they seemed very confident in what they knew. I want to be sure, too. He wrote down some information about John and said he would look into it. 5 days later, he called me. I'm sorry, Mary Beth, but these women knew what they were talking about. If you want evidence you can present in court, it will take another week or so, but if you want to know everything for sure, we have the audio recording. How did you do that? They rent a room at the Motel 6 on their lunch hour and then go back to work. After work, they go back to the room for an hour or so before your husband goes home. While they were at work, we bribed one of the cleaning ladies to let us into the room and plant a bug. Now that we know their schedule, I can put a couple cameras in there. All I need is for you to give me the okay. Go ahead and do it, Alan. Alan brought the audio tape to my office in the afternoon. I was contemplating whether to listen to it in the car on the way home or wait until everyone had dispersed and listen to it in my office. The last thing I needed was to lose it while listening to the tape while driving the car and crash into someone or something. It probably would have been better if I'd just taken Alan's word for it that John was guilty and hadn't listened to the tape at all, but that was water under the bridge now. When the office cleared out at 5 o'clock, I waited 10 minutes, walked around the office to make sure I was alone, and then went down to the conference room on the 3rd floor and put the tape into the tape recorder. There was the sound of a door opening, then a woman giggled and said, "Hurry up, baby, get undressed! I need sex!" The sounds of clothes falling to the floor, and then, "Tammy, you have the most beautiful body I've ever seen." "Better than your wife's?" "Much better, mistress. Everything you do is so much better than what she does." "Better than that cheating Sally?" "No comparison, baby, you're the best." Jesus, Tam, it feels fantastic. I turned off the recorder. Asshole, I thought. Pathetic asshole. 6 days later, on a Thursday, Alan came into my office and held out a videotape. There are 2 days recorded on this tape. We bribed the receptionist, and she put them in a room we had already set up with cameras, and then made sure they got the same room the next time they came back. This tape has Monday's and yesterday's meetings, both meetings, lunch, and after work. How much do I owe you for what you did? Not at all. We do a lot of business with this company and don't mind occasionally doing a favor for the people who work here. Nonsense, Alan. I should pay for it myself. Gifts like that have a way of coming back to bite you in the ass, and I'm going to need this job when I leave John. Okay, I'll give you the bill. How about having dinner with me tonight? I don't know about that, Alan. You don't want to go straight home from work in the mood you're going to be in because of that tape. Have dinner with me, and I'll pour you a couple of stiff drinks to calm you down a bit, and then you can go home in a tolerable mood. Dinner was pleasant. I ordered ribs, we each ordered a carafe of Red House wine, and dinner was followed by Bailey's Irish Cream. After the waiter cleared the table, Alan handed me a bill for his firm's work. The total amount was $2,012, and it was rubber-stamped, paid in full. I can't accept that, Alan. No, you can. You have a receipt that says you've paid in full, so you're protected. We'll call your company tonight as payment of the bill. I stared at him for a few seconds and then asked, How does your company feel about helping customers get revenge? What do you mean? A little of what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I need someone to take responsibility. What do you mean by take responsibility? Over the past year, my sex life has dwindled from 4, 5, and sometimes 6 times a week to 2 or 3 times a fortnight. John has always claimed it's because he's too tired when he gets home from work. He works 10 and 12 hours a day, so he claims, in order to take the vice president's job when it becomes vacant. He keeps telling me that he is the favorite to take Sam Cockney's place when Sam retires at the end of the year. He may be too tired for me when he gets home, but now we know it's not the work that exhausts him. I'd like to find a man who can get me back to work 4 or 5 times a week. How about it, Alan? Can you do that? He was like that. We left the restaurant and he drove me to his apartment. I wasted no time in getting there. He asked if I wanted to tour the apartment and I said, just take me to the bedroom. By the time we got to the room, I was left in just my panties, swim trunks, and high-heel shoes, and as I started to take off my shoes, Alan said, "Please leave them on. It's the high heels and nylons that turn me on the most." "Then you're in luck, darling, because I love the way my feet look in them, and I have a dozen pairs I can wear for you." I walked over to him and reached for his dignity, but he pushed my hand away and said, "This is my apartment, so I go first." He pushed me back on the bed and we made love. We did it 3 times before he couldn't get up anymore and collapsed on the bed beside me. In the warm aftertaste, Alan asked me what I planned to do next. "I'll try to keep you interested because I'd really like to do it again, many times. I mean, what are you going to do about your situation?" "In the short term, I'm going to give him what he's been giving me. I'm going to tell him that I have a chance at a promotion and that I'm going to work late to try to make it happen. Hopefully, I'll be working late here. Am I being too presumptuous in assuming that you enjoyed what we just did as much as I did and would like to continue?" "You assume correctly, and yes, I would definitely like to continue." "Okay. In the short term, I'll be too tired for him on the nights he decides he wants me. In the long term, I'll hit him where it will hurt him the most, and that's his pocket money and his image. He's the kind of guy who believes that whoever has the biggest and most toys wins. Who has the biggest house, the most expensive car, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. I'm going to destroy his image and wreak havoc on his pocketbook." "And how are you going to do that?" "I'm going to send him to an almshouse and ruin his reputation. I may have to ask you for a favor on the reputation part." "What?" "If I can't find Sally and Patty, the girls he fired, I may have to ask you to try." I found Sally, and she told me about Rachel, the girl John got rid of so he could date Sally. I found Rachel, and she told me where I could find Patty, and then I invited the 3 of them to sit down with me, and we talked for a long time. All 4 of us agreed that John was an asshole, made a plan, and started working on it. If the plan worked, John's reputation would be destroyed. The financial side of things would take a little longer because it depended on a few things I couldn't control. I needed John to successfully complete the negotiations he was working on and get his commission. And then I needed him to be out of town on business for 3 or 4 days. In keeping with his penchant for having bigger and better things, John had long planned to install an in-ground pool and furnish a tennis court. He had set aside every bonus and commission for the past 2 years for that purpose, and the next commission check would have to be enough for it. I would let him finish the job, and only then would I divorce him, after he had put all his money into the house and increased its value. The house would have had to be sold in the divorce, and I would have gotten even more than I would have gotten if I had gone after him when I found out about his affair with Tammy. Also, he would have had to sell all of his toys in the property division or deduct their value from the monetary estate he would have to share with me. But all of that would have to wait until John built the pool. There were a few things I could do while I waited for John to build the pool and tennis court. First, I rented a storage unit, and using John's credit cards, I started buying things I would need when I left John and moved them into the storage unit. Further, my parents left me a mountain cabin on 6 acres of land, and although I had always intended to put John's name on the title, I had never been able to do so the property was titled in my name only. According to the attorney I spoke to, it was not jointly acquired property, so it should have been excluded from the divorce agreement. The cabin had a wonderful view of the south side of Pikes Peak, but the place had its drawbacks. It was strictly a weekend getaway place. It had no water, you had to carry it with you, no electricity and no phone. I decided to fix that. Routine chores, such as paying bills, were beyond John's ability, so I pretty much handled our finances. We had some certificates of deposit that were to become part of our retirement portfolio, and I cashed them in and used the money to drill a well and run a power line to the cabin. These 2 actions alone tripled the value of the house. I then removed the outhouse, built a septic field, hired a contractor, wired the cabin, and installed a flush toilet. John never knew about all of this because he never went up to the cabin in the winter or spring. He didn't show up there until mid-June, and by then I was hoping to shove Tammy up his ass. John got his commission and started the pool and tennis court. Our life with John was mostly coexistence. He worked hard to get his promotion, and I worked hard to get mine, and we hadn't had sex in almost 3 months. Not that I missed him. Alan took very good care of me. But I could tell that John was annoyed that I was always too tired to make love. He'd snapped at me about it a couple times, and I'd reminded him of the times he was too tired to fulfill my needs. "It'll get better," I told him. 2 more months tops, and I'll get a promotion." He whined that I didn't need a promotion, that he was perfectly capable of supporting me. "It's not about the money, John. It's about prestige and the realization that I'm so much better than the others who wanted a promotion." There was no promotion, so of course it's all complete nonsense, but since John thought so, he fell for it. 2 weeks after the pool and tennis court were finished, John threw a pool party and invited a lot of friends, neighbors, and people we had worked with. Tammy was there, and she was so nice to me that it was uncomfortable, but I smiled throughout the party. I made sure I was always around her or John so they couldn't sneak off together. I didn't want John to sleep with her because I had plans for him. Alan was at the party, but he didn't act any differently towards me than any of my coworkers who were at the party, although he did wink at me a couple times when he caught my eye, and my knees went weak at the thought of what I had planned. I left John and Tammy enough room for Tammy to get John hot, but kept close enough that nothing would happen. The party started to break up around 11, and an upset Tammy was one of the first to leave. Once she was gone, I nodded my head to Alan, and we left the room separately and met in the laundry room. I quickly had sex with him, but that's all we had time for. He came out, I quickly pulled up my panties, kissed him passionately, and then we hurried back to the dying party. After half an hour, everyone left, and I was alone with my husband. I took his hand and led him into the bedroom. "Neither of us will be making excuses tonight, John. It's been too long and I need sex. I've been waiting all day for this moment. I'm hot and ready to explode." He was hot, too. Tammy made sure of that, so he offered no resistance when I undressed him, pushed him onto the bed, and made love to him. I realized I was giving him sloppy seconds. God, it felt so good doing it with him. What I was waiting for happened 2 weeks after the pool party. John told me that he was flying to Chicago on Monday for a 4-day business trip, and that he would be named vice president when he returned. "Oh my God, baby," I said. "That's going to be wonderful. I expect everything I've been working on to happen by the time you get back." "That's wonderful," John said. "We can have a big celebration." "Oh, I plan to celebrate, kiddo. You can count on it. I had everything ready when John flew home on Friday. I wish I could have seen his face when he saw his shiny new Hummer in the parking lot. Someone had slashed all 4 tires and smashed both sides and the hood to metal with a wrench. While he stood there shouting obscenities at the unknown vandals, 2 men who had been standing in the parking lot waiting for him got out of their car, walked up to him and handed him divorce papers and a restraining order prohibiting him from coming near me in the house. John was not a stupid man, and I know he put 2 and 2 together and guessed who had trashed his prize Hummer. The 2 men waiting there should have served as a tip-off, but he had no proof. By the time he arranged to have the Hummer picked up and taken to the dealership and filed a police report, it was the middle of the day. He called my cell phone 3 times, which I refused to answer, and when he got to his office, he was not in the best of spirits. Upon arriving on site, the situation was not any better. First, Tammy was not at his desk, and he didn't know the woman who was sitting there. He asked where Tammy was, and the woman said she didn't know. All she knew was that she was to tell John to report to Mr. Everett's office as soon as he arrived. John headed to Bert's office expecting to be congratulated on the Falcon deal and told that he was the new vice president. Instead, he learned that he didn't even have a job. At 10 in the morning, Bert was handed papers informing him that the company was being sued by Sally, Patty, and Rachel for harassment and wrongful termination because of their refusal to provide John with love services. But that would only come out in court, and we expected the company to settle the case long before it went to court. At 10:30 in the morning, a special messenger delivered a package to Bert that contained videotapes of John and Tammy's coitus. Bert summoned Tammy to his room, and she cried and told Bert that John had threatened to fire her if she didn't serve him. Bert prudently did not fire Tammy, although we hoped he would do so that we could make her part of the harassment suit. John, however, turned out to be quite different. He was told to vacate his office and leave the building in an hour. Since the restraining order prevented him from returning home, he had to check into a motel, and over the next 3 days he learned that all of his credit cards had been maxed out or canceled, his checking and savings accounts were empty, and his safe was empty. But the most satisfying part was when the insurance company informed him that they were not going to cover the damage to his Hummer. I canceled the insurance a week before he left. Alan and I were extremely discreet, except when Anne saw us, and John had nothing to use to countersue. Since we had no children, the divorce went quickly. John insisted on a 60-40 property division based on the fact that he was the primary breadwinner. My attorney fought for a 75-25 property division, since there would have been no divorce if he had not been an unfaithful husband. John was on unemployment benefits and was strapped for cash. He didn't even have a car to drive around looking for work until he found the money to repossess his Hummer, so he had a choice to make. He could negotiate and settle, or he could wait and go before a judge and see what decision he made. I think the lawyer convinced him that if he went before the judge, he would get less benefit, so he agreed to a 60-40 split in my favor. The house and all of John's toys, the boat and trailer, motorcycles, ATVs, and snowmobiles had to be sold and all the money thrown in the bank to split 60-40 between us. Part of my agreement with Sally and Rachel, when I gave them money for a lawyer so they could sue John's company, was that they would not sue John personally until our divorce was final. The day after the divorce, they sued John personally for love harassment and wrongful termination. Their attorney filed a petition with the court to freeze John's assets until the lawsuit was finalized. My lawyer said the chances of a judge making that ruling were slim, but John still had to pay the lawyer to fight it, and that was my goal, to kill John financially. But what was really killing John was that I was still living in his house and knew I was enjoying the pool, tennis court, and hot tub. I improved the cabin my parents left me and then sold it and gave the money to Alan, who added some of his own money and used it to buy the house. Alan bought the house as an agent for MJ Investment Company, and at the closing, as John and I were signing the papers, Alan told me that MJ was buying the house as an income property and asked me if I wanted to rent the house out and continue living in it. The look on John's face when I said yes was priceless. A couple months later, I would inform John that MJ had only 2 equity holders, me and Alan, and that the initials MJ stood for Mary Beth John. Alan and I are getting married next month, and I'm wondering whether or not I should invite Anne to the wedding. The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.